Based on the literature, a lot can be said on both prompting methods. Although one of the most important pieces of knowledge to remember is what is stated in CARP's 2012 study, which is that every child is different and which method one uses should depend on what task the child is learning. In the case of this 5-year-old child with ASD who has near age appropriate skills, the literature would suggest least to most prompting as the best way to teach skills. At the age of 5, the child should be able to use their hands and fingers, so therefore their fine motor skills. And some skills that they should be able to do by this age is use a fork or spoon at the table, so using utensils. Toileting by themselves, so they can still have accidents or bedwetting, but they should be able to go to the bathroom by themselves. And lastly, they should be able to skip or do a somersault. With this child, it says that they have near age appropriate skills. So if they aren't able to do these things, these are some of the areas that parents can work on by using prompting. CARP's study also discusses whether least to most prompting is better or whether most to least prompting is better. So before we go any further, I just wanted to review the prompt hierarchy. So this is from a great website called theautismhelper.com. So it starts off at the top with visual, then verbal, gestural, modeling, partial physical, and full physical. So least to most prompting would start at the least invasive prompt and then work its way down to the most invasive, whereas most to least prompting will start from the most invasive and go to the least invasive. I just wanted to review this before we continue because it is important to understand the prompt hierarchy, to understand the arguments made. So it was mentioned in CARP's study that most to least prompting should be used for beginner learners because of the amount of errors that tend to occur when using least to most prompting, which can lead to disruptive behavior. Although this child in this case study has no history of problem behavior stated, and CARP's study also later states that through other research presented, that least to most prompting allows for the child to learn faster compared to most to least prompting. One also must consider those who are implementing the prompting, which in most cases is the parents. Halbert's 2020 study does just that. They had parents participate in 3 different prompting methods, one being least to most prompting, then they had most to least prompting, and then progressive prompt delay to see which one the parents preferred. Overall, least to most prompting was the most preferred as parents found it gave their child the opportunity to be independent and achieve the correct responses on their own, and if they struggled, the parents were there to aid them. Parents also found that most to least prompting is the easiest to implement and is the least amount of intrusiveness. Lastly, a study by Libby in 2017 also compared both methods and found that most to least prompting slowed learning time and least to most was more effective. So this is a chart from Libby's study, and it includes 5 children participants and 2 columns. So one is most to least prompting, where they recorded the total amount of sessions it took for the children to understand and generalize the task they were doing. And then same with least to most prompting, total number of sessions. And then also there was a column for how many errors on average they made. So most to least showed that it actually took more sessions for the children to understand and generalize compared to least to most, although they made a lot less errors in most to least prompting compared to least to most. There was more errors made with least to most. So it is not to say that most to least prompting is ineffective and not to be used. As previously mentioned in CARP's study, least to most prompting can cause disruptive behavior because there's an increase of number of errors that can occur when using this method. Therefore, if you had a child with lots of problem behaviors that come out when the child is frustrating, using most to least prompting is probably a better fit for that individual. So one parent in Halbert's study also stated a similar feeling that most to least prompting was the most effective for his child because his child engaged in problem behavior. So most to least prompting prevented that. So when the children are, in these sessions where they're learning things and they're learning to generalize, most to least prompting is considered errorless, because as soon as they make a mistake, like if they start to do something that's what they're not supposed to do, the parent will immediately correct them. And if we remember from the hierarchy chart, they're going in full physical to start off with. So there really is very little error. So for a child that is very easily frustrated and upset when they make a mistake or they don't understand, most to least prompting is probably the best option for them. Thank you so much for listening.